There are many videos online of people revealing all of the life lessons they had learned later on in life that they wish they knew earlier on. And I'm sure many of them include the more common and somewhat obvious things like time is precious. So use it wisely, start saving money when you're young, don't date a person just for their looks and charisma, find your passion while you're still young, get a professional skill, and so on. So I'm going to save you some of these more typical life lessons and share with you my personal list of things I know now that I wish I knew back then, that I hope you also find useful and relevant. Health is one of the most essential necessities for being happy. Without health, we really wouldn't be able to enjoy anything in life to the fullest because our body or mind wouldn't be functioning properly. This includes spiritual healing. It is so fundamental that human beings have a proper means of healing the mind in a world that is so challenging, where emotional trauma is almost inevitable. And yet, the majority of the world is still in the dark about how the mind works and what is effective for coping with and treating personal problems. I've heard of dozens of people who have suffered for years and even decades, living with emotional trauma from their childhood. In fact, about 65% of North American children are reported to have experienced significant trauma known statistically as adverse childhood experiences, typically within families or at school, among which many of these children continue to feel affected by these experiences into their adult life. It's very sad because most people in this position feel completely lost as to what to do about it and how to heal. That is why spirituality and spiritual healing is at the top of my list of things that I wish I knew when I was younger. You can save yourself years and even decades of suffering and emotional bondage if you can manage to learn early on in life about the common traumas that people go through and how to heal them after they happen. The feeling of freedom and peace of mind that you get when you finally heal from a long-term trauma is invaluable.
When you're young, a trauma might happen to you, and at first, you may not understand, or you might think that you can handle it, that you can just let it go. But this is the first time that it's happened to you. And then your mind dwells on the events, and later on, gradually you realize what happened, but it's too late to turn back. So the trauma grows heavier and heavier as you realize that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something about it, to stand up for yourself, to fight back, to use your voice, but you didn't. You hesitated. When you go through something horrible like child abuse or sexual abuse, or something overwhelming like bullying over the long term, or a terrible betrayal, or being cheated on, tradition says that you're supposed to speak out, to fight back, to take revenge. But when we fail to do this, we suffer even more. And for us, it's just too much to handle, too much to let go all at once. This is what life is like without proper holistic healing practices for the mind. Our minds are so conditioned that the only way to feel better is if we do something just as bad to the other person. But we need other ways and better ways to heal, because traumas are very common. Most of the time, we're helpless. The good news is, there is a solution. There is one great benefit and necessity in suffering. That is spiritual growth. Nobody wants to undergo trauma. Nobody wants to admit that they carry a miserable past that ruined their childhood for almost a decade or longer. But remember, the only way to progress spiritually, the only way to grow the conscience, is to remove the conditioning that it carries. And that process is always painful. Any creature or soul with a conditioned mind, with ego, carries karma. And when we pay that karma, we do so through suffering. This is something we should be grateful for. The Buddha said that all pain comes from desire, and all happiness comes from serving others. For many lifetimes, we have put energy into motion by feeding desire. So that's why we feel the consequences of our previous actions. His Holiness the Dalai Lama interviewed a monk who was exiled from Tibet after the Chinese had invaded. This monk was imprisoned for 15 years and beaten and tortured. He went through the conflict and struggles of that time and place. The Dalai Lama asked, "What was your greatest danger when in prison?" And the monk's response was, "Losing my compassion for the Chinese." So you can imagine how devoted he was to maintaining upright view and love and compassion for others in such a treacherous time of his life. And somewhere in the interview, Dalai Lama said to the monk that it would have been easier to practice spirituality in that prison than to practice here at home at the meditation retreat. When I first began meditating on my youth trauma, after a few insights, my intuition told me through dream text, the consciousness needs something to feel. And Master Samael explained a similar thing. A mind that is at service of one's real being results in an effective instrument. The mind is made to be receptive, not as an active instrument. If someone hurts us, we must not permit the mind to react. Wish that there will always be someone who can hurt us in our feelings daily, so we can in that way train our mind better to be passive. The more insults we receive, the better for our training. Keep in mind, the pain of paying karma doesn't last very long. When you compare it to the millions of lives you've already lived, enlightenment can be attained in one life after all. We all have to work on ourselves at some point. How can you work on your pride if you've been feeding it your whole life and can't remember any time when you didn't stand up for yourself or embarrass yourself? How can you work on your sorrow and grief if you've never failed miserably at something or lost a loved one? Meditation is the right thing to do. It is the proper way to heal the mind. It is the way our mind was intended to function, with serenity and alertness. Meditative comprehension expands the consciousness. As your awareness expands, a lot of amazing things happen. You begin to see the bigger picture in life and find it easier to prioritize the things that really matter to you. And for more dedicated students of spirituality, these struggles and ordeals are what you want. You want these ordeals so that you can become more and more resilient to the dramas and difficulties of life. With this practice, you'll never have to find yourself looking back and considering asking your ex-partner, "Why did you do this? And why did you say that? What was that all about?" Because you will be able to find the answers yourself. So cherish your insights and keep referring back to them. Follow them, stick to them. They're true and they're beautiful. But for people who are very serious about energy work and transmutation, more advanced and specialized practices have been provided to us by ancient religions like Hinduism. The most common and effective ones include Hatha Yoga, Pranayama, Dream Yoga, and meditation and prayer. And the highest and most sacred practices, Tibetan rites for rejuvenation, and Tantra. Statistics show that about 30% of the world is lonely. So I'm going to give you a few practical steps on how to solve this very common issue. First off, if you're a very lonely person,
it could be because your search specifications are very narrow. So my first suggestion is to try to broaden what you're looking for. What if you're somebody who has this innate desire for social status? You yearn to be part of a specific circle, an exclusive group that exudes a sense of status. And this group, whether defined by taste, fashion, career choices, religious affiliation, or any other marker, has a social hierarchy that you strongly want to be a part of. If you're this kind of person, this is really going to add a level of challenge for you, because now you're limiting yourself to a very specific and narrow demographic. It's also very shallow and self-interested as a motivation. So when I was 21, what snapped me out of this pursuit was the realization that one of the main reasons I was so lonely was because of my desire for social status. My goal was to only make friends with people who could make me look better, ultimately. My desire to have a sense of community and belonging was really more like the desire for gang membership, to be part of some interesting, cool group. So it was status-based. And so when I became fully aware of this, my goal to grow a high-status friend circle started to look too superficial for me. So I soon let it go. I let go of the idea and broadened my search criteria. So I suggest giving the status pursuit a rest, because at the end of the day, not a lot of people are going to notice you hanging out with your friends or care who you hang out with. Even if you're a classy artist or a rock musician or something. I mean, there are plenty of famous people out there who have a lot of friends because they hang out with all sorts of people, not just cool people. And I don't think this ruins their image. If you really want, you can always just buy status from your social media. For your social media, using status boosting services like SMM This is your social life. You're growing here. So instead of trying to look a certain way by hanging out with certain people, you're going to have a lot more fun with people who actually have things in common with you or who you're comfortable with. So try making friends with people who are less attractive. Make some geeky friends, make some younger friends, make some older friends. Just welcome in everyone you can resonate with, especially those who share the same interests or core values. The truth is, the interest that people have in you when you meet them for the first time really won't last longer than a day if you don't find a way to put yourself in a regular routine with them. It's because you're just too much of a stranger and they have too much going on in their life. So this is a really crucial step. People are so comfortable with their social circles and so occupied with their own lives that they just don't care about or remember that nice stranger they met at the local band show last week or last weekend. They have some interest, but it's just not enough to get them to reach out to you. It's usually just a matter of laziness. People want to hang out with you. They thought you were cool, but life gets in the way and they can't find time. They don't know what your schedule is. They don't know when it's going to happen. And it never ends up happening. So it's not that you're not interesting enough for them. It's just that you're not convenient enough because you're outside their routine and vicinity. You don't go to school with them. You don't work with them. So for this reason, it's so much easier to make friends at school or work. Which brings me to my next point. You have to do something interactive if you want to make friends. It'll help you so much. If you're going to school, start with the people who are taking the same classes. or take a different class that's more interesting for the sake of being around the right people. If you're not in school, I don't recommend that you sign up for college just for the sake of making friends. That's way too expensive for this purpose. But your workplace is a huge wellspring for friendly relations. We spend 6 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week around the people we work with. So it makes sense to just put yourself around the right people. Even if you're not working full-time with these people, even just to spend 1 or 2 days a week with them is enough to build rapport and familiarity and to build a bond. And so friendships blossom easily and naturally this way. Unlike the occasional club event or concert, your day job gives you innumerable opportunities to talk to people. And it's not awkward because you're at work. So you have to talk to people to get tasks done. And you also expect, instead of awkwardly jumping into a silent moment on the bus with somebody or at a club, you're expecting each other to talk to each other more and fill out the silent gaps usually when you're working. Otherwise, it's actually awkward to not speak. It can be a little bit strange to not speak if you're working with someone. If your job doesn't surround you with the right people, as I said, I recommend changing jobs or getting a second job just for the sake of being around people you like. Now, outside of work, another great way to make friends is through meetup groups and hobby classes. When I say meetup groups, I just mean any organization or group that gathers people together for events on a regular basis. This is where Facebook is really useful. So a lot of Facebook event organizations only do events once a month, but that can sometimes suffice. This is why you do need social media a little bit like Facebook to really meet people for organized events. And places like, things like Meetup, that online service that allows you to create groups and host local events, is also a perfect way to meet people. By now, there are probably a handful of similar services available. And whether you go through Meetup or Facebook groups, almost every hobby has its social group or courses you can join or sign up for so you can learn and play and mingle with like-minded people. There's a group for almost anything you can think of, and a lot of those groups do have events on a regular basis. It's the interactiveness and ongoing nature of these groups that builds acquaintanceship and makes friend-making very easy. Taking something like martial arts, dance, or electronic music production classes or camera workshops once or twice a week is perfect, but twice a month might suffice. Otherwise, places like concerts, bars, and clubs are usually very transient. You talk to someone after a rock show and you think you hit it off really well, and you did, but then they take 2 weeks to accept your friend request, and they hardly remember you. So you send them a few messages, you talk for a bit, suggest to hang out sometime, and it never ends up happening. The only cafes, bars, and clubs that will make you solid friends, and I know this from experience too, going to different places, are the ones that bring regulars once or twice a week. Then you have more chances to acquaint yourself with the same people, right? And they will reciprocate more and more to you that way. It's got to be a repetitive thing, right? You got to be like in someone's way, in a good way, and interesting at the same time. Then you can start creating that bond. Because I've been to different places regularly. I used to regular numerous clubs and hobby groups, basically underground art groups, going to these venues and stuff. And the only ones that really stuck, the people who really stuck, were just the random bars that I found that happened to just bring the same people there. And we had some things in common, and I would just talk to them every week. In general, most people don't change too substantially after high school once we've reached adolescence. By our late teens, our core personalities are very developed. So even though we continue to go through inevitable changes, the geek to freak or similar transformations that some of us experience, where we become nearly unrecognizable in every way, is really not something that happens often or something we should expect from every person. It's pretty rare. But the thing is, I've noticed that there's a tendency in youth to have an over-attention to detail, coming from usually the perfectionism that persists in our late teens and early 20s. So what tends to happen is that many of us as young adults look at ourselves very observantly and notice every detail, every upgrade, every little change, and we perceive a lot of change from that. And I mean to the point where we start seeing ourselves as a totally different person. And why? See, because the problem is that this really just arouses a lot of unnecessary and immature pride. And I know this from experience because I did a lot of weird, creepy, showy things when I was very young, from 18 all the way up to 24, just to try to prove to people that I was changing and upgrading myself and making myself more sophisticated like everyone else. But looking back at it now that I'm in my 30s, I can clearly see that in the adult world, you really don't need to do stuff like that. It was all so proud and petty and foolish and even bothersome to other people to try to prove all of these unnecessary things to others back then. So one reason why it's unnecessary to prove yourself to others is because you may be trying to prove something that most people already have the potential to do, just because you're a human. We have a lot of potential. So if most people can do that thing, then why wouldn't you be able to? So where's the need to prove it? There's no need to prove it to people, right? So when you're young at this age range, we go through some changes and then some of us think that we're so different now. But to an adult's perspective, we're really not that different in terms of our core personality. It's really just our attention to detail in our youth that makes us see more contrast like this. Because anytime you have an attention to detail, there must be a more contrasting perspective. That's what happens when you're detail-oriented. And this is where perfectionism comes from. So when you're young, we'll, for instance, become proud of a new skill or interest we've picked up, only to be told by an old friend that we haven't changed. And then we get a little flustered inside and feel like their perception doesn't do justice. And I had a moment like this one time when I was 18. And of course, now that I'm looking back, I think he was right to say that. I think I didn't change that much. So oftentimes the changes we undergo are too subtle for others to notice immediately. And what about you know who? That particular ex-partner that you've been feeling the urge to prove wrong or prove yourself to. What is there to prove or show off? Your newly acquired taste in modern art, your interest in politics or psychology, your expanded vocabulary, your monthly Excel spreadsheet budget that you finally figured out how to use, your new girlfriend or boyfriend. And oftentimes we find ourselves with a new partner and we think, man, I wish you know who could look at this impressive romance we got going on. When in reality, an adult would look at this situation and just say, well, this new partner, are they really that impressive considering what you got going on for yourself? Is this not something that everyone does or can achieve? So, and at the end of the day, who is this really about? Is it about them or is it about you? Because I think if you don't sincerely care about
the people around you, the friends you're trying to show off to, or the ex-partners you're trying to prove to or show off to. And if you don't have enough in common to be close friends with these people, then all you want to do is impress somebody or receive some kind of approval, then I would say it's really not worth it and you should just move on. Because unless you've undergone a very major transformation in every way, and it's something that nobody does very rarely, yeah, maybe it's interesting. Maybe it'd be fun to kind of show this to people, to flaunt it, to prove it. But other than that, you're probably not going to impress anybody or that person. And there's also that likelihood of being just bothersome and obsessive if you attempt to try this. If you go online and message someone and say, hey, look at this, or you do creepy things to get people's attention. And think about other people's taste. Because, some people don't even care about things like status or materialism. That person you're trying, if it's like an ex-partner, they may not appreciate or have interest in, or even get jealous over the same things that you do, believe it or not. Not everyone gets jealous over status or popularity, believe it or not. Some people actually get jealous over things like good marks or intelligence or taste. You might consider expensive cars, designer clothing, or social status to be impressive things to become jealous over, but they may instead be more interested and envious over things like intellectualism or just having a very sophisticated taste, whether it's in poetry or art or music or philosophy, and so on. If they were never that compatible with you to begin with, then their taste is probably very different. So they're even double not worth trying to impress, because they're not compatible as a friend. We don't like the same things. And if you did that, you succeeded in impressing the person and you turned them into a friend, they're still not compatible with you, then it wasn't even worth it all along. The first thing that I want to mention about self-pity, embarrassment, shame, being insecure about what other people think of you, is that this is an imbalance of energy. It's the case that people with a lot of feminine energy, whose dominant natural elements are earth or water, in fact, tend to struggle with self-esteem. And then when I'm talking about astrology, it's always going to be in reference to either the sun or the moon signs, and a little bit of the ascendant or rising, but primarily the personality planets, sun or moon, because those are the ones that directly influence personality and character. This is not a sexist statement, but this is just how masculine and feminine energy work, because one of them is detail-oriented and the other is not. So people who have these energies in their psyche have an innate attention to detail. So when feminine energy is exaggerated or out of balance, this quality of mind can cause a person's awareness to become very narrow and fixated on minor observations, right? Minor details. This leads to pettiness. The end result is insecurity, overthinking, taking things too seriously, perfectionism, embarrassment, as I said, pettiness, and an overly critical perspective. So my first recommendation is to consider whether or not you have an abundance of feminine energy in your astrology. Particularly your main birth sign and your moon sign, since the lunar sign is your subconsciousness. It's basically who you are on the inside. Mostly they say your emotions. If one of your signs is anywhere near Virgo or Taurus or Pisces or Scorpio or other feminine signs,
This is probably the reason why your feelings of self-criticism or insecurity or embarrassment are so strong. And it doesn't have to be in that sign, right? If you know how to read some of the charts, it just needs to be near it. Even if you're 6 or 8 degrees away, even like 8 degrees away from a sign like Virgo, that can have a really strong influence on you. Or Scorpio or other signs. But even being, so 6 or 8 degrees, that can still have a very strong influence. It doesn't have to be a cusp. This serves as a big reminder for men especially, because a lot of people aren't aware that perfectionism and feeling insecure or embarrassed is actually it's a very feminine quality. So when men discover this, a lot of them might immediately realize that they've been sitting in their feminine too much. And for that reason, that idea can help them snap out of it, so to speak. Because masculine energy doesn't have this kind of imbalance. It's not petty. It doesn't complicate things with details. Masculine energy allows a person to see the bigger picture, overall picture or situation. And it can prioritize through insignificant details in order to handle the meat and potatoes of something. Masculine energy is very independent because people who have it have this innate ability to just be themselves and do things in their own way, have their own ideas without shame or the need for approval. Realize that your job in life is to be you, and that you can't please everyone because it's impossible. If you kept changing yourself constantly to win respect and admiration from people, it's impossible for one thing, and that would contradict your personalities, your ways, and you would be rejecting your own character and beliefs at the same time. You will actually come off as more certain in yourself if you simply shift your attitude by owning yourself and just admitting to all of your flaws and mistakes and not making a big deal out of it. If you own everything about yourself around other people, including your mistakes and imperfections, if you really own it in your attitude and you don't feel any way about it, it tells everyone that you don't give a damn, you're not insecure, and you know your worth. So this shift in attitude can still be effective even when others don't agree with you. A more helpful mindset to have is the courage to be disliked, which is also the title of a book by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. At one point in the book, the authors say that you may not be able to change the way other people view you, but you can change the way that you view yourself. And in return, and that's basically the end of the quote, but in return, this can make people understand how you feel about yourself. I think this is a very simple kind of go-to rule, which is that as long as you're not doing anything wrong per se, nothing too extreme or out of the ordinary. I mean, if you have a good idea of what is normal or common and accepted in the place you live, in your culture, then there is no reason to worry about what people think because you're not doing anything wrong, right? Nothing too extreme. You're not abusing people. You're not criticizing, or you're not yelling, or you're not being extremely angry about something, or you're not being creepy. You're not hurting people. Like obvious things like that. If you're not doing anything like that, then why care, right? So for example, if somebody doesn't like a certain picture of you on Facebook or on a dating site, well, you're not doing anything wrong because it's just a photo of you and you can't do anything about your genetics, so you don't worry about it. And the fourth reason you can stop worrying about what other people think of you is because of what I call the anchor of balance, or the law of balance. or the law of average. And this rule states that the average person has a lot of potential and is doing something important with their life. So we don't have to entertain insecurities like jealousy or criticism. We all have desire, we all want to pursue some kind of career, we all want to become something or do something meaningful with our life. Likewise, the average person is not going to look down on you and be so critical that they perceive you as below average and no good for no reason. You should never be in a position where you're embarrassed yourself about something and just are waiting for the other person to change their mind about you. Likewise, you never have to be in the place of uncertainty and asking people what they think of you just to make sure that you have their approval. Because really, this is very needy, approval-seeking, dependent behavior, right? If you're independent, you don't need to know what other people are thinking, right? You don't need to know what they're thinking about you. You don't need to wonder, you don't need to ask. Authentic self-worth is not dependent on other people or circumstances. It's just an internal attitude. And you can't control people's opinions at the end of the day. There's no guarantee what someone actually thinks of you anyway. So even if you try to give them the right impression, you may not. So my point is that whatever or whoever you are, you should just own it. There's no rules to follow really when it comes to how to live your life. This is more masculine for the men out there and as well for women who just want to be more independent. When you're comfortable in your own skin and you accept yourself fully, you take on this I am mentality. It's like Popeye. I am what I am. That's me. Take it or leave it. The ability to not care what others think of you will endow you with fierce independence. Most people have the idea that our chronological age is the precise numeric indicator of our biological age and youthfulness and vitality. And unfortunately, this belief really limits the way we look at our youthfulness and progress through our lives. I remember when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I was living with heavy emotional trauma that was weighing me down and keeping me from being content and happy and living my life to the fullest. Because of my chronic state of anger and melancholy, as well as my tendency toward idealism, I found myself counting the years and becoming more and more desperate to fully enjoy my life during the period that most would consider their golden years, the 20s. Every year, there was this growing sense of urgency in me to get out there, make friends, and have a good time. But this was impossible, being constantly distracted by my anger from the past. I organized this golden age personally in my mind by age. I wanted to make the most out of my life from 18 to 23. That was my concept. Because that's what I considered to be my early 20s. And I felt that once I would reach 24, it would be kind of too late because that's not really what I considered my early 20s anymore. I saw 24 as the precipice of my mid-20s, which I considered to be this other stage of youth, the later stage of youth. It just seemed different to me. Later on in life, I discovered the incredible longevity research from the scientist David Sinclair. And my perspective on age and aging radically changed. I watched an interview of him explaining the science of aging and why our chronological or numeric age doesn't always correlate with our biological age. In other words, how old we are actually, in terms of vitality and like length of life, that's what the vitality age is, or biological age. He explained that aging is a complex process that is influenced by many factors beyond just the mere passage of time. Factors like diet, exercise, sleep, climate, and stress. So here's some main points to take away. Nobody ages at the same rate in spite of chronological numeric age. We exhibit signs of aging in part due to genetic predispositions, but mostly because of our lifestyle, actually. Researchers have identified, I think genetics influences our aging by about 15 or 20%. It's not very much. Researchers have identified various biological markers that can provide insights into biological age, such as telomere or telometer length, which are the protective caps at the end of chromosomes. Epigenetic modifications, so changes in gene expression, inflammatory markers, and levels of certain hormones. These markers offer a more accurate assessment of a person's aging status than chronological age alone. Many people, in fact, regularly test their blood to find out their biological age and discover that they are either many years older or many years younger than their numeric age. In fact, David Sinclair himself was once biologically 50 when he was still in his 30s, chronologically. I once saw an Instagram post by him that showed his bio age result, and it read that it was 44 years old when he was chronologically 50 years old. This was a few years ago when I looked at this. So he was 5 years younger in terms of his vitality. So really, your age also depends on how you physically feel, as well as your attitude. The amount of energy you have every day, how many push-ups you can do, how long you can run, and so forth are some indicators of your vitality. If you get rid of the limiting idea that your age depends solely on the number of years you've been alive, you can add years to your life in a sense by letting yourself live like a kid again, or like a teenager again, or like your 20s again. And with the right routine, you can suspend and even reverse aging so that your youthful mindset becomes a reality. David Sinclair teaches this in his research and his books and works. So overall, the idea that chronological age is just a number underscores the importance of focusing on overall health and well-being rather than solely on the number of years lived. So by adopting a healthy lifestyle, like these practices, healthy lifestyle practices, and cultivating a more positive mindset, you can enhance your quality of life and prolong it. Instead of identifying yourself with your numeric age, you can simply say that you're young, or that you're in your 20s or 30s, or whatever decade you're in, instead of specifying it. Why do you have to specify it when you don't really know how old you really are in terms of vitality? And if your biological age is younger than your numeric age, then you could just go by that instead of your numeric age. Pretty cool concept, right?
It recently occurred to me that as somebody who had endured about 6 years of daily insomnia and countless hours of laying awake in bed, I have yet to make a talk about how I overcame this extremely common sleep disorder. So I've tried a few different supplements for sleep, and pretty much all of them were single ingredient products. One may have been passion flower, another kava, and the one before this was melatonin. I was told by one of the nutritionalists that the herbal supplements start to work after you've been taking them for a few days or weeks, which didn't sound very promising to me. And not surprisingly, I didn't get the drowsiness and sleep I was hoping for. I eventually tried melatonin, and that actually worked okay for a few days, however. Then it stopped working, so I bought another bottle with a higher dose, and then that stopped working after a few days. So I bought the highest dose available at 10 milliliter, and that worked for another few days or week, and then it stopped working again. I was kind of surprised and disappointed by how quickly and easily my body built a tolerance to it just by taking it once a night like that. So that left me back with my insomnia for a while. Now, I don't remember exactly when I discovered Ortho Sleep by AOR, but I do recall walking down a street and coming across an advertisement for it just outside a health food store. And in spite of my lack of success with a few herbal sleep supplements, I thought I would give this one a try. I think it was the claims on the advertisement that got me interested. I believe it said something like, best-selling sleep supplement in Canada, or something like that. So I got it, and like magic, I was able to feel the onset of drowsiness strike me within minutes. I was so pleased and amazed by it. So the reason why the supplement is so good is because it is so comprehensive. It has all the effective ingredients you typically find in anxiety and sleep supplements combined in one. I've personally found this to be the best natural anxiety supplement because not only can it treat intense mental panic attacks immediately the way GABA does, but its powerful herbal ingredients help to sustain a sedative effect in the body and muscles for a good amount of time. So it can continue to work in your system for about an hour or two until you become calm naturally. This holds true for sleeping as well. It's designed to keep you asleep. So, the ingredients. It has the amino acids. These are responsible for inhibiting neurotransmitter brain signals when we feel panicked. This one has the popular GABA, 100 milligrams, and L-theanine, 200 milligrams, as well as 100 milligrams of L5-hydroxytryptophan. It has the well-known melatonin at 3 milligrams, and it has all the herbs. Valerian root extract, 150 milligrams, passion flower extract, 32 milligrams, and lemon balm extract, 300 milligrams. It packs a herbal punch. So this product works very well because it's strong, so I will give you a dosage guide. The instructions say, take 1 to 2 capsules before bedtime with or without food. Well, you'll feel it faster and stronger without food, so that's up to you. But the thing is, this product is so powerful that really, if you're less than 150 pounds, you should start with half a capsule and work your way up. I sat around 146 pounds when I was taking this almost daily, and it was working thoroughly on me when I dosed it just between 1/3 and 1/2 a pill. I still use it today for anxiety attacks because it lasts much longer than GABA alone, which is what I used to take. Now, if you're 150 pounds or more, then I suggest starting off with 3/4 to 1 capsule. I don't recommend following the dosage on the label because it's too much for the average person and will cause nausea. Ortho Sleep is natural and herb dominant. So even though it has 3 milligrams of melatonin, you can take this stuff every day, almost as many times a day as you like at low dosages like half a capsule. And you won't develop any significant addiction or long-term effects with it. The only reason I would limit the number of capsules to 6.5 is because of the melatonin content. 6.5 pills would keep you just within the maximum recommended daily melatonin intake. Combine this product with 200 or 300 milligrams of magnesium bisglycinate, which works to relax your nervous system and your rest and digest muscles, and from head to toe, brain to body. You'll have yourself a total body relaxation supplement concoction for anxiety and sleep.
So with dreams, for example, it's very easy to become enchanted by the psychedelic appearances and believe many things to be more significant than they actually are. Especially for the detail-oriented artist, the artists and journalists out there who enjoy writing or recreating the things they see in the astral plane, we need to take a moment to reflect in the morning and reconsider if what we're excited about is really worth writing about, or painting about, or whatever you do. In my case, as a landscape photographer, the biggest setback I had back then was my over-precision in finding dreamscapes in the physical world, and missing the point of these dream photograph locations, and never being certain as to whether or not the location I found was the same place that I saw in my dreams. I was never sure, and because I didn't understand the point of these locations, I continued to search for more places in the hopes that I'd find more similar locations that I could compare with one another, right? To make sure that I found the exact place. And this was a time-consuming mistake, because what I realized over time was that the whole point of all of these locations was to simply capture landscapes that were unique or peculiar, mesmerizing, colossal, or nostalgic enough to look like they came from dreams. So it wasn't about finding the same locations that I saw in my dreams, but rather that the places I found physically were just as impressive, strange, and mysterious and captivating as the dream places I would come across. So here's my advice to you. As a dream artist and spiritualist, since your dreams are a source of inspiration, you need to prioritize your ideas because you're getting a lot of them with all the phenomenon you see. And the thing is, not everything you see in your dreams may be worth writing about or making art about. Many interesting dream things we come across are actually very mundane, everyday appearances. So I recommend that you have a good understanding of the point of your dream art ideas, right? If you're so fascinated by a particular subject or site in a dream, then what point is it giving you? Like, what are the elements that it has that make it stand out more than other dream subjects you've seen? As I said in my case, when I thought about this, I realized that I didn't need to capture the exact dream locations to get a dream effect in my photography. What I needed was to find places that simply had mysterious dreamlike characteristics. That was the point, the quality that allured me. Now, for the explorers out there who are trying to find these dream places in the physical world, you should ask the same question. Is the dream landmark really worth trying to find? Or is it just another mundane commonplace? If you're choosing a place to film or photograph, is this the only place that does the job? Or can you find other places that carry the same vibe or the same effect? Now, regarding finding these places in the physical world, these dream places, here's some advice I have that may clarify some uncertainty. You have to keep in mind that nothing looks precisely the same in the dream world as it does in the physical. The nature of the astral plane is to flow and shapeshift, not to mention the relaxed quality of gravity that it has. Pretty much everything we see is much like an AI-generated image of something, where the main characteristics and associations are just scrambled up together to make a very familiar but generic-looking appearance. This is why it's always a bit uncertain as to whether or not we have discovered the same place or thing in the physical world as we did in a dream. So to save you time, I can tell you from experience that most of the time when you find yourself coming across a place that looks awfully similar and feels familiar to a place you saw in a dream, it is that place. If it has the same general quality and a few of the same particular characteristics, it is that place. This took me a while to realize, but it just became clear that with how shape-shifting and generic the dream world is, you can fairly assume that a similar looking thing in the dream world is the same thing you saw in the physical world and vice versa. I've passed through a number of very vaguely similar looking places in the physical world, only to realize years down the road that even though these places didn't have the exact shape and form and face of direction, there weren't any better locations in my city or area to say that I would be mistaken to call these places dream locations.